Welcome to Procter Conversations, the podcast where leadership in business and accounting isn't just discussed, it's explored. I'm your host, Zane Stevens, and thank you for joining me as we delve into the minds of some of the most influential leaders in the industry. Our journey is one of discovery, from unraveling unique stories that shaped our guests' careers to invaluable advice that fueled their success. We're here to provide you with simple, actionable advice to accelerate your career and personal growth. Whether you're a budding professional or a seasoned executive, these conversations are designed to offer insights and perspectives that resonate with everyone. So tune in, engage, and be inspired as we build better leaders together. Welcome to Procter Conversations. Today, we're with Carter Welch of SureLaws. Carter is a branding, sales, and business coaching professional with hands-on experience in multiple industries, including wine, manufacturing, and professional services. After growing up in Maine, he was a history major at Bodine College. Upon graduation, he worked in brand management for Procter Gamble, Pillsbury, and Brock's, where he built a consumer brand with $9 million to over $50 million in less than 4 years. For much of the past 20 years, Carter has built his own company focusing on branding, marketing, and sales growth. Impressive. Carter is married to Tracy, who has a long history in the accounting space and looks after, to say the least, one really great winery and a bunch of other businesses. She was featured in one of Procter Conversations' written pieces that we previously featured, as well as Carter did the same. Carter is active in the youth leadership and competes in short-distance triathlons several times a year when he isn't playing golf. Carter and Tracy love camping and driving vacations, especially visiting their 3 recently graduated sons, a new daughter-in-law, living in LA and Sacramento. Carter is an amazing person, and I am very certain that every one of you are going to learn a ton from him. Carter, welcome to the show.
Great.
So, Carter, we've known each other for, call it 4 years right now. And over those 4 years, I would say we've become friends.
Yes.
Yes, maybe.
Yeah.
He's okay. What I've really appreciated about our time together is just the sort of guidance that you've provided me, and it's always been in the most sort of well-rounded approach, considering all sides of the situation, which, sometimes I can be a little bit more direct and to the point. And I've always found that being a great quality of yours, and I really appreciate that side of you and, that sort of insight that you've brought into my life and improved, who I am over that period of time. So we spoke about it in your introduction. You had an incredible career before you went into the consulting world. Would you be able to just share a little bit more about that with us?
I grew up a kid in Maine, and I think when I worked at Procter Gamble, it just was a foundational, life-changing experience that I've taken with me, through my entire career at this point. It's funny. I was with a brand new client yesterday, and we were talking about her advertising. It's a small business, service-oriented business in food and beverage. And we were talking about advertising, and I said, well, let me share one of the first lessons I learned at Procter & Gamble about advertising. And it was, when you see an ad, you should look at that and say, that's the me I want to be. And she just ate it up, loved it, and wrote it down, and was looking all at it. And it's just lessons like that I learned at big companies, and that have really I use today. In fact, one of the things that I think separates me when I'm working with smaller clients is the ability to take best practices, insights, things from my big company experience, and being able to share that with smaller companies. Because very few small companies have billion-dollar budgets like Procter & Gamble has, but they have the same issues of, how do I get leads? How do I communicate something in a way that is going to be compelling to a customer? And so I pull those experiences out a lot and apply them to smaller companies. It's funny, as we were talking about this, one of the things that came to mind for me, there was a story when I was at Procter & Gamble of research and consumer research, and Folgers Coffee they were creating a new can, and they came up with this beautiful gold can, and they shared it with consumers, and consumers said, "Oh, I love the gold can. It's really wonderful." But when they asked the question, "Oh, how much would you expect to pay, and does that fit with my brand?" Everyone said, "No way, heck no, it doesn't make any sense." And it's the practical, being able to listen to your customers, listen to your clients, listen to consumers, that I think I've taken from big companies, but taking the practical insights of that and applying it, that's really critical. And I think one of the biggest areas of improvement for most small businesses that I see is going out and listening to your clients and understanding your clients. So many people I find, and I'm sure you're not the same way, Zane, because you are perfect. But most small business owners um, will say things like, "Oh, I don't need to talk to the clients. I know them. I've been doing this for a long time. I know what they want." And inevitably, when I work with a business owner and we go and we get feedback, um, they find out things that they didn't know, and they change things all the time just because they spent the time to talk with them, to listen to them. And it's not like Folgers. It's not asking your client if they like the gold can or not, but it's understanding, what do I really want that person to do? What do I want them to know about my brand, know about my business, and are they really getting that from my messaging? That's some of the things that I take from big companies and apply them to small.
Yeah, that really is a skill. I mean, there's a lot of consultants out there that have worked in big businesses, and they just come in like, "This is what you got to do," and it's really not realistic because, like you said, they just don't have the budget. We don't have the deep pockets to be able to sort of implement those strategies that you're speaking about. But at the end of the day, the practical outcome is the same, and how do you adjust those practical outcomes to the business in front of you and the budget that they've got to be able to do the work? It's a great lesson for any business leader or anybody that wants to go into consulting, that they need to adjust their thought process and their budget size to match the business they're dealing with.
One of the questions that I encourage people to ask is, a lot of business owners say, well, if I ask them a question, they're not going to give me the right answer. They're going to tell me what they think I want to hear. But one of the things that I encourage people to do is ask a client, hey, if you had a client that was in the market for a service like I provide, and they were that I give to you, and they were asking you to describe us, how would you describe us to that client? What would you say? How would you describe us? And that's when you get better answers. You can get really good answers. Um, I was doing something for a client once that developed software, and I was asking them and I went out and interviewed a few of their clients and asked them, oh, well, how would you describe this company? And they said, oh, well, they're really good for, I think they're really good for really small businesses. Turns out the small business they were describing were like a quarter the size of this particular client. And so by asking them a question of how you describe them, I then was able to get out of it that they really didn't like the software. It didn't really fit for them. It wasn't really something they wanted. They wouldn't have necessarily come out with it, but just asking someone, hey, how would you describe us to someone else if they were in the market for what we were doing? How would you explain it? One of the things we call it is kind of using third party language um, to get at truth. Like that's an easier way to get good feedback and honest feedback without people feeling like, oh, I'm offending you, I'm hurting your feelings or anything like that.
That's a great strategy. We asked our clients that, just last year to sort of get the same feeling, to make sure our brand was, on point of what we thought it was. So how did you make the decision to go from these big businesses to the consulting world?
Great question, and I'd love to say there was some, brilliant strategic insight. Sometimes it just happens. I, one of the things that I found is that at bigger companies, I have the patience to be there for maybe 5 or 6 years, and then I feel like, okay, I need to get moving. Um, there's something about big companies where I feel like, boy, there's a lot to learn, good things to get, but I really want things to happen. I want action to take place. Let's launch something. Let's move something. When I was at Procter and Gamble, there was I worked on one of the brands I worked on was Crisco shortening. And I learned so much from this experience. But they had there's a product that had been lingering for years of figuring out how to take Crisco, well before you were born, Zane. Crisco shortening came in these big tubs, big cans, right? And to scoop things, I had to scoop things out. It was really a mess. People didn't really want to use it, but it was great for baking. And but the research people said, well, we have to have a perfect product, and we haven't come up with one, so we can't really launch anything. But I knew that something like that, kind of like butter sticks and things, would really make sense. And we didn't need to necessarily be a perfect product, but we just need to be a lot better than we are. And our research people just didn't want to do it. If it's not perfect, we can't launch it. So I found a product that we happened to make in another country that wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to get on the market. And I was able to get powers that be pretty high up, P&G, to say, oh, let's just put in this little tiny market. So we put this thing in Watertown, New York, over the arguments of some of our research people. And I remember going up with a couple folks and getting into Watertown, New York. Met with little TV and radio stations. They had a little minor league baseball park, and we put a little sign out on the bullpen that said "No mess measuring Crisco." And so we launched these Crisco shortening sticks, and it became a huge success. And in fact, it had been 5 years, and I left and went to the Pillsbury Company, and then next year they launched it, and it became Crisco, the Crisco shortening sticks that to this day are available in almost every place in the country. But it was just the process of saying, look, let's get something out there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but let's get something that's really good and let's test it. Let's give there's no better substitute for getting something out into a market and asking people to spend their own money on it to find out if there's really value in it or not. You can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on testing, but until you actually get something out and test and see if people are really going to spend their money on it, you don't really know. So I'm a huge fan of doing those things like that.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to start, right, to find out what the answer is going to be. So you like action, you like a little bit of speed, you like to see results. So can you share with us what your day-to-day looks like? I'm sure it's very different every day, but what does a general day for Carter look like?
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'll tell you today. So I do about 3 years ago. I decided I was kind of fed up of being, very much overweight. So I went through Kaiser Medical Weight Management Program, lost a boatload of weight, and decided I needed something to keep my attention. So I decided to do short distance triathlons. And it's funny, I tell people all the time, I said, what's just short distance? It's like a half-mile swim, a 13-mile bike, and a 3-mile run. It's not really long stuff. And they said, dude, that's more than I'm doing in triathlons. I'm not doing anything. And so I have to remind myself, well, it is good. It keeps my attention. But like most mornings I will do something. Today I get up and in the rain swim outdoors for about 45 minutes. Doing that, I try to start my day doing that. In the last few months, I've learned the power of yoga and stretching and just how keeping, sharpening the saw and keeping some of those things right that we don't always pay attention to really help us. And there are great lessons there for business. It's the basic stuff of keeping your business in shape that really helps it. So I do that. I do a little bit of yoga. I do running. And then I get back and I meet with clients generally 2-3 times a month on a hybrid consulting coaching basis. And so I will spend mornings either in some meetings or preparing for other meetings, trying to figure out how to simplify and focus, help my clients focus. I mean, for me, since I'm working with business owners, one of the biggest challenges is try to help them simplify as much as possible, make it easy for them to implement and make change. I mean, an awful lot of what I'm doing is helping them change habits. And habit change isn't easy. And so I'm constantly spending time during the day figuring out how can we How can we change this habit? How can we change that habit? Um, think bigger, think a little bit bigger, focus and move forward. So my day, like, I had a coaching session with someone today, and we're spending time going back to Stephen Covey's 4 quadrants of urgent and important. And this person knows what they want and need to do, but they're spending, by their estimate, they spend 85% of their time in the urgent and important quadrant, and almost no time in any of the other quadrants. So it's not like they're sitting there saying, "Oh, I'm spending all my day on the internet." They're not doing that. But as we kind of get into it, if all your time is being spent working on the urgent, you're not being able to work on the important. So I spend time with him, going through and saying, how can we change that habit? How can we help you implement a little bit of change here? Just take baby steps. There's one of my all-time favorite movies is What About Bob? The Bill Murray movie with Richard Dreyfuss. You look puzzled. It was great. Bill Murray. It was one of Bill Murray's great comedies, I thought. And he was a what's the right phrase? He worked with lots of therapists and had difficulty. Like, he had phobias and couldn't get out of his apartment. And his therapist went on vacation, and so he had to take baby steps. And he had to take his fish with him, and he had a little jar that he put around his neck. But he'd get out of the apartment. Everything was baby steps, and he'd say baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. And I was talking to this client about it today, and he said, "Oh, it's one of my favorite movies." But finding ways to take baby steps and let people know. One of the terms that I'm just in love with right now is start where you are, not where you think you should be. That we all feel like, oh, we're too far behind. We're not where I should be here. If I was more disciplined, I'd be here. I should be here. I should be in more control. And we spend so much time worrying about where we should be, as opposed to just saying, okay, let me start where I am, not where I think I should be. And let me take baby steps and make progress that way. So worked with them there. What else? Typical day, I'll work with. Had a client meeting today where we're working on strategic planning for 2024, and just helping them. I've had the honor of working with them now for 5 years, and their business is going great. And they said last year was one of the best years they've had, and so we're spending time figuring out what's really important is it biz dev, and how do we get more out of the time you're spending, get a little bit better return. So we spent time talking about getting a better return on the referrals that you're giving. And how do you track that, and how do we do that in a simple way so you can get a better return on the work that you're doing? Started yesterday, drove down. I will meet with clients in person on Zoom. And so I spent time starting out, and we spent yesterday, get a wonderful note back from her today, but we spent the first meeting just talking about, hey, you're going to spend money with me, you're going to spend money on marketing, let's figure out how you can afford it. So let's find some low-hanging fruit. So I think, my experience with my customers, for every small business client, there has to be some practical ways that they can generate returns, generate some money, see some benefit, because most, in my experience, very few small business owners can say, I'm just going to sit back and I'm just going to contemplate the future, and spend the next year thinking about where we want to be. It's just not practical. And so I spend a lot of time. We spent half our time yesterday was just saying, okay, let's think about some low-hanging fruit. What can we do to generate a little bit more revenue here, a little bit more profit there? I spent, they have a food service business, restaurant and bar. And we were going through the numbers, and I said, you realize if you took a 4% price increase, you would double your net profit for the year. Just 4%. And she said, what? I said, yeah, here's the numbers. Here's what you told me. Here's this, here's that. So, if that Caesar salad, instead of costing, $13.50, you could somehow charge 13, $13.95 or $14.25. Someone's going to get me on my math here, I'm sure. But charge a little bit more, you would double your profit right out of the bat. And it's sometimes it's helping people take a step back, go someplace else, get another set of eyes on their business. It doesn't have to be me, it can be a spouse, it can be a friend, it can be anybody. But giving other people permission to ask the kinds of questions like, that doesn't really make sense. Why is this the case? Have you thought about that? Is really helpful. So I spend a lot of time trying to do that, bring into other categories of experience.
Great. So a couple of lessons out of there. One, baby steps. I'll
Yeah.
have to add that movie to my list of about 150 that I have to watch, and I watch about 5 movies a year, so I've got a list forever going. But baby steps really, really important, and then actually taking some action. There's a lot of people who sort of sit out there and just think and contemplate and make plans, but actually don't do anything. Strategic planning is absolutely useless if there's no practical plan at the end of the day to implement and try to be successful.
I've put the sign on my desk, and I always, when I've been in different roles, had people. I always say, great ideas executed poorly always fail. Good ideas executed with excellence usually win. And you have to, like you said, you have to have good strategic planning. You have to think of having really smart ideas. But if you can't execute them and you don't execute them, they're absolutely, because you've devoted time and effort and energy to create some vision that you're not going to do anything with.
So, Carter, you've had an exceptional career so far. You've had the success in the big businesses, and then you've now had the success as a consultant as well. But I'm sure there's been some challenges along the way, either personally or professionally. Anything you'd like to share with us, sort of the challenges along the way that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, I had a great. I was one of the people was a former client and comes back every now and then for some help. I walk with on a regular basis, and just last month we were walking, and he said he just started beaming and cheering. And he said, Carter, one of the things I really love about you is that I can relate to you because you've had some great successes, but you've had just some spectacular failures. And he said, it's just so encouraging. And I thanked him for being able to be fodder for helping him feel better. But yeah, if you never try, you're not going to have any failures, but you sure aren't going to have a whole lot of successes. And it sounds cliched, but that's definitely happened. Where I've had some, um, in the last recession in the before 2010, um, my wife and I had launched a small marketing services business. We ended up opening a second office just as the recession was coming through, and we'd had a good year, but it wasn't good enough. And we said, well, we're going to launch this, and everything's going to go great. And then the economy got worse, and we were just not well positioned for it. And it just was a spectacular failure. And we spent months, way too many months, continuing to invest, and it was one of the situations where if I were coaching myself, I would have said, stop. This is not. You're putting bad money. You're putting more good money after bad, and it's not a wise thing. And I think in some ways it was probably an ego thing where I said, well, I'm good. I'm smart. I built these big businesses. I've gotten awards. Of course I can do this. And I didn't listen to myself. And so we just ended up just losing tons of money on it. And for me, it was a great lesson. Um, and humbling, it's like when things are going really well and you get accolades, it's great it feels great. But when things don't go so well and you say, yeah, I should have done that differently. Sometimes it's hard, but it's a reminder. To me, it was just a reminder that, um, there's a phrase I hear some people use there, but for the grace of God go I. And the point of it is just that, things can happen. And it was right around that time that I would serve breakfast once a month um, at a kitchen in a hard town, people who didn't have jobs, and there were people who had families where they had some jobs, but they didn't have a home. They didn't have enough money for it, and you'd sit and you'd talk with them. Every time I left, I just thought, oh my gosh, not my expectation. I mean, it's people who are trying, people who are bright, people who don't have a break, um, and for me, the lesson was, things can happen, and you've got to just constantly be open to change and be humble to the idea that the right direction for you at a given point in time may not be the one that you're thinking. But if you get too stuck in thinking and too pig-headed that saying it has to be this way, then you can go too far down a path that doesn't work.
Yeah, it's tough. I see it with small business owners all the time. Like, we'll just sell our way out of this problem. It will be fine tomorrow. Instead of just like, sometimes you just have to hit that escape hatch, and that could be changing directions. It could be getting out 100%. Sometimes you have to sort of put your ego aside and make decisions that are better for you at that time, that moment in time, even if it's not the plan that you had for yourself. It's tough though. It's tough to sort of swallow that pill sometimes.
I think one of the hardest things for owners along the lines of what you're talking about is knowing when you have to make changes with people. I was at, I'll remember this till the day I died. I was at a larger company in a senior level position, and I was meeting with the CEO, and it was an employee who I had tried, really bright, well educated, came from all the right places, had a big heart, but just wasn't the right person in that role. And I tried multiple ways, and I tried months, and I put them here, and I put them there, and I trained them here, and I trained them there. And I remember talking to the CEO and saying, look, I'm afraid I'm going to have to let that person go. And he said to me, Carter, it's my experience at our company that rarely do we fire people too quickly. He said it's really the opposite. And he said, I don't mean it to sound harsh, but when you have someone that's not the right fit, or inclination, if you have any bit of a heart, your inclination is to try to make it work and do everything you can. But there's a point that's generally a lot sooner than we want to admit, where we realize this person's not the right fit, and it's not helping us. And if I have a whole lot of other people in my company that are reliant upon our success, and I can't put all of that at risk because of one person who may have a great heart but isn't the right fit. And my experience is that most owners don't fire people too soon. They wait, longer than they know they should. And all that extra money that you're paying them because they've stayed with you for a whole lot of extra months, you cut that in half and put that into a, very favorable package as they leave, and then they're in better shape, you're in better shape, you work together, and you move forward in a way that's going to benefit everyone. It's interesting. I have more conversations than I'm aware of with business owners, especially small business owners, meaning under 10 million in revenue, where I think they underestimate the impact that emotional bandwidth plays in their ability to manage their business. In other words, and it usually comes down to people issues. We only have so much, we only have so much bandwidth, emotional bandwidth ourselves in dealing with things. And when we go way down the path and go deeper and deeper and deeper in trying to solve a personnel problem or a personal problem that someone has, it takes way more of our emotional bandwidth than people realize.
Yeah, the people side of it's tough. It's always hard to make those difficult decisions, mostly because, we have a bit of a heart, right? You care about the person, and there's generally not a person that you want to get rid of that you don't like in some way, and that makes it extra hard. And like you said, it is a training. I mean, I would say when we're struggling with people within our own business, that is the toughest time. That is the time when my managers feel the most drained and most unsatisfied with their jobs, because it takes a lot of energy to to deal with other people's problems. So totally in agreement with there. So Carter,
Yeah.
what are your short-term goals for both your business and personally, either or? What are you looking to achieve in the short term?
Um, I'll start personally. I probably make this goal every year. Number one, I want to be a better husband. I want to be supportive, more supportive. Um, I have the most amazing wife in the world, and I feel like, I need to continue to work harder and harder to be a better husband. It may sound cliched, but that to me is number one on my list. Um, Second big one that comes out is serving. I've served as a youth group volunteer for a long time, over 20 years now. And every week, once or twice a week, depending, I'm leading a bunch of high school students and trying to create space where a bunch of high school boys can share, get to know each other, and share issues and challenges. And I am constantly amazed at how difficult it is to be a teenager, you know, in the world these days, to be a high school student. There's just so much pressure. And um, being able to give back and be there and just listen and create a space where people can share is just so important. And so for me, that's my kind of second really big thing, is to try to be there more. And and it's funny, I've learned over time, and it's probably true in lots of areas in life, it's not that I have to come up with some brilliant answer or solution, but it's just being present and having the discipline to just shut my mouth and just listen. Um, so those are two of my personal goals. Business front, had a couple of really positive years, and this year's kind of starting out even better. So I'm very encouraged about that. But um, one of my goals, one of my key business goals, is to find and keep the right clients that, um, you know, I'm I'm not immune to a little FOMO here and there, right? Where fear of missing out, where I need to take that client, and every time I take on a client that I look at and I say, oh, I'm not sure this is the best fit, but I'm smart enough, I'm good enough, I can make this work. Every single time I do that, it inevitably isn't a great fit. And so I'm trying to do a better job. And it's painful. It's painful when you end up working with someone and they don't get what they want out of it, and it's a miserable experience for you. So I am trying to do a better job of making sure that someone really is the right fit. And if they're not, then I introduce them to other people. But that's one of my business goals. The second is, by mid-year, I'm going to be offering a couple of series of kind of one-to-many, where almost like a boot camp. So leadership for business owners and marketing 101. I'm doing a lot more work these days as a fractional marketing leader, fractional CMO, or fractional marketing leader for small companies, because it's just so hard. I get, people, best client came up to me a couple of years ago and said it great. She said, Carter, I get someone says, give me $100,000 and we can do this. Give me $100,000 for an SEO project. Give me $100,000 for advertising. Give me $100,000 for this. And she said, I only have so many hundreds of thousands of dollars that I can give out. And so I am putting together a program. It's going to be probably a 2-month program, once a week, to help small business owners better understand how to make sense of their own marketing and how to make the right decisions on who to partner and how do I understand where I should be going on marketing. So I'm pretty excited about that, being able to reach more people.
That's really exciting. I know that'll benefit a ton of people. You have so much great advice, and you've shared so much with us already. Love the goals as well. I think very important for everybody who's listening to understand that understanding who your client is and being very rigid in making sure that the people that you're bringing on as clients match that criteria is one of the best kept secrets for any successful service provider. You have to be picky with your clients. It is so important to your success. And, it's so easy to do a favor here or there, but it's not worth it. It's not worth your energy, and they're probably going to be disappointed. Carter, what's the best piece of advice that you've received in your life that has helped you being successful?
Seek the real truth of what's happening. When I was at Procter Gamble, so I started out in brand management as an undergrad, and most of the people at P&G in the brand management program are MBAs. And so there's just a tiny group of us who came straight from undergrad. And I was a history major. So I had zero business experience. I had one accounting class in college, and I didn't do that great in it. But I had no business experience, but I went to Procter Gamble, and I'm on a brand. When I was on, it was a Crisco shortening brand. I'd been there a little over a year, a little less than a year. And there had been these great, brilliant people who had come up with a model of pricing the Crisco shortening business. And the model said that every time you take an increase in Crisco shortening price by 5%, you lost 20% of your business. And I kept looking at it and saying, well, wait a minute, we're already more expensive than others, and we've got a pretty good market share. That doesn't make sense. And I would ask people who'd been in the business longer than me, these brilliant MBAs. They said, no, the model is what the model is, and that's what it says. And you got to trust the model, and don't use your gut. You need to trust the model. But I said, this doesn't make any sense. And I started digging in and doing research and discovered that Crisco shortenings, by the time I was there, Crisco had a 60% share of the shortening market, and it was twice as expensive as next closest competitors. 15 years earlier, it had a 60 share, and it was almost the same price as competitors. So it didn't make any sense. And when I got in, I just dug in and said, okay, I don't care what you fancy MBA folks think the model is. It's not right. So I dug in and was able to figure out that there was a flaw in the model where they had basically failed to take into consideration that when people buy Crisco shortening, there's a lot, you only buy it once or twice a year. And if the price goes up a little bit, what would people say? Oh, price has gone up. I don't need a new one yet. I'll wait. They go back next week. Oh, it's still up. I don't need one yet. A month or so goes by. Oh, I'm just about through. I guess I have to buy it. So Crisco share would always come back. But they were so afraid of going against a model. Like, this is the model. This is what the numbers say. That they didn't take logic and good common sense to look at it and find the truth. And when I found it, I was able to encourage the company to take pricing. We became a lot more profitable, and it was a big success. But I think part of the reason, the encouragement that I had to do that was from a guy named Jeff, who was a couple levels above me, who said, trust it, dig in. If it doesn't look right, don't, challenge it. Whether you think you have the credibility or the background or the experience, if you don't think it's right, challenge it and try to make it get the right answer. I do that to this day.
Great advice. Do the work, ask the questions, make sure it makes sense. As you sit here in your career now, is there any piece of advice that you've learned in the last few years that you wish you had known when you first started out?
Don't let time go by doing something that you don't really want to do or that you're not really passionate about. There have been a couple times where I've stuck with something too long where it's not really, I don't really like it, and I should stay. This is probably good for my career. And when I look back on it, I found inevitably that when I was in something that I didn't really want to do, I wasn't really motivated on, I didn't do my best, and it was just time wasted. Whereas if I had spent maybe more time at a few critical spots in my career of really jumping in and doing the things that I was really passionate about, I think it would have had a really positive impact along the way.
Life is really short. Do things that bring you joy, or do things that help you achieve a goal. And if they're not reaching either one of those, you probably should move on.
And, the other thing that came to mind, and I'd like to think that I haven't been unkind to people, but be kind to others. It sounds like an obvious statement, but oh my gosh, we live in political times, where um, kindness and um, and cooperation and listening seems to be at a minimum. And I can't imagine a situation. I can't think of a situation in the past where I've been kind, helpful, supportive, genuine, caring of somebody in business, and it didn't pay out. It's like it always does in some form or another. Whether it relates, whether it translates to something monetarily, or just a good sense of, yeah, that was the right thing to do, and I feel good about myself. Um, just be kind, be kind, be kind.
Carter, we've asked you for a little bit of advice today, and you've given us a ton. Been absolutely amazing. But I got one last question for you. And I know that I'm going to get some good advice from you because you are an amazing leader. But what is that piece of advice that you'd give others out there to help them in leadership qualities?
Focus on encouragement, genuine encouragement of the people on your team. Find reasons to find things that people are doing well and go out of your way to encourage them on it. And people can see through BS, and so if you're coming up with things that aren't valid, it doesn't is so critical. And I shared a story with my new daughter-in-law over the holidays that I was one of those people. And you may need to cover your ears, but I was one of those people who, when kids were playing in sports teams when they were really young, everyone got a trophy on my team at the end of the year. But they were valid. They were legitimate things, and I wanted to encourage everyone. I wanted someone to have a success out of that experience, and it might be, and there were some times when I had to think long and hard about what that real success was that set that person apart. But it might be best hustler at practice award or something, right? And I would encourage someone, and someone would take that and they'd look around and they say, that's a legitimate thing. And thank you for noticing that about me. And I can feel really positive about it. And I think encouraging people in ways that are meaningful make all the difference in the world. In our told you I was a volunteer in a youth, with youth, and there are students that play in a musical group, and I will come up to some of them after they perform, say to the keyboardist, "Hey, I saw you kind of riffed there a little bit, didn't you?" Or singer, like, "Oh my gosh, your runs!" Like, I learned one thing from watching The Voice on TV, that people make runs, right, when they're singing. But it makes all the difference in the world. It's encouraging. If you find things that people are trying to do, and you can encourage them on that as a leader, it's so critical. We spend so much time as leaders trying to find the negative things that people do and how to change them on it. If you spend more energy encouraging people, finding things that they're doing well, and encourage them on those areas, to me, it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes we spend way too much time on the negative and not enough time on the positive. If we flip that narrative around, it can make such a big difference in somebody's life.
Huge.
Again, thank you for all the advice, Carter. This has been amazing. But we do want to get to know you a little bit better. So would you mind sharing with us, just a little bit something interesting about you, something you do in your personal life outside of what we've already discussed that sort of, you do short distance triathlons, but is there anything else that you could share with us that would just allow us to get to know you a bit better?
Oh my gosh. I play music to death. So I'm like a dog on a bone when I have a popular song at the moment that I love to listen to. And my kids and my wife just say, "Oh my gosh, you just killed that song for us." But I love. Oh, and relates to that. One of my passions is finding um, um, metal songs that are played by bluegrass, that are covered by bluegrass bands. There's a group called Steve and Seagulls. They're a Scandinavian band, and they have like fiddles and upright basses, and they play like Guns N' Roses and AC/DC and Metallica, and it's just great. When you hear banjo or heavy metal music, love it.
Interesting. Carter, thanks. We love to do rapid fire. So if you're ready, I've got 5 rapid fire questions for you.
Got it.
What would be your last meal if you knew that this would be the end for you?
Lasagna.
Lasagna, nice choice.
My wife's
Do you
lasagna,
prefer
great recipe.
wife's lasagna? Very specific. I love that. Do you prefer mountains or the ocean?
Love mountains. Love the challenge of, the next peak, and the next challenge that you're climbing.
What is a quality you appreciate in a close friend?
The ability to listen, the sincere desire and the ability to listen. And when you say something, they just demonstrate in their words that they really were listening to what you had to say.
Great quality. What's a favorite book you'd recommend everybody reads?
Oh my gosh. Oh, The Purpose-Driven Life. It basically, the first, and it's written by a pastor, a guy named Rick Warren, but it is for people who maybe aren't of that ilk. The first line in the book is, "It's not about you." And the whole premise of this is that, whether you're faith-based or not, just living purposefully for other people is really a higher level calling that satisfies your life.
Last question, number 5. If you were stuck on an island by yourself, what were 3 items you'd bring along?
Oh, I'd bring my MacBook. I'd of course bring my wife, but I guess that's not a thing. My MacBook. I'd bring a banjo because I've always wanted to learn how to play the banjo. So I think I'd like to bring a banjo. Oh, I think I'd bring the Bible. I think that there's a richness that I would really get, continuing to read that and understand.
Answer. And with that, we end another Protea Conversations. Thank you for joining us on the journey of learning and inspiration. Today we've gained insights from our guests and taken another step towards understanding the diverse tapestry of leadership in business and accounting. Remember, each conversation is a step towards the positive transformation of business leaders. We hope our discussions have given you valuable takeaways to apply in your own career and life. Don't forget to subscribe to Protea Conversations on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode. We'd also love to hear your thoughts and experiences, so connect with me on social media channels. I'm most active on LinkedIn and would love you to join the conversation. Join us next time for more engaging stories, advice, and conversations that matter. Until then, keep striving for excellence and embracing growth. Thank you for listening. Be kind, and goodbye from Protea Conversations.